Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, Magic Online Championship Series.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people talk about the Mox Ruby, Mox Sapphire, Mox Jet. This is just Mox. Straight up Mox.
Oh, but I noticed that you missed the Mox Pearl. But at the top of the Mox standings, White Winnie.
Dude, white aggro in the form of just straight, soulless. I guess the soul in this one it's a little bit bigger, right? Like once you're playing 4 heroic reinforcements and 2 Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants in the main deck, not everybody does that.
No, they certainly don't. Yeah, this is a little bit bigger. It's got the full 23 land and 4 Legions landing, so it's a little more mana than some of the other White Weenie decks.
Yeah, plus, I mean, at the end of the day, how else are you going to fit Mountain into your deck if you don't add more land? The question
when you say
I have...
Mountain, you mean mountains, right? Because there's a full 2 in this deck. But you know what? There isn't any copies of. 0 copies. There's no marshals in this deck.
The use of the creature mix in this list is actually really interesting. To begin with, the use of just 7 1-drops that can actually attack on turn 2. There's also those 4 Snubhorn Sentries, but that's obviously that's for a little later. And then there's 4 Legions Landing, which is that's something, but that's just way less than we've been seeing in a lot of decks. But
to be fair, Snubhorn Sentry can battle to help flip Legion's Landing, right? It just doesn't do any damage.
Right. Sure. And then the only 2-drop Adanto Vanguard, which is not crazy. It's just that it's interesting playing with only 4 Adanto Vanguard for the 2 spot, and not the most aggressive package of 1-drops. And instead, this one's got a little bit bigger token vibe, but it's still not, it's not exactly particularly different from what we saw at the Pro Tour.
Well, so Adanto Vanguard at the 2, so no Knights. That's a very aggressive creature, and the other thing is it's exceptional against Jeskai, right? That's I think it's claim to fame, especially with Jeskai winning that Grand Prix a week ago.
Yeah, Jeskai had a real good week last weekend, as we talked about, a week and a half ago. But it sure looks like there's been, a little bit of adjustment in the metagame for that. Not necessarily particularly here with this whitelist, but like just the amount of Carnage Tyrants throughout the metagame and so on.
Oh, yeah. There is some mass adoption in Jeskai Slayers in these in Golgari decks. If we want to go down to the other 8-0 deck, Mortician's Union?
Well, definitely in just a second. The 2 things I wanted to get your kind of take on was first, Baffling End. What do you think of a full play set of Baffling Ends along with 2 Ixalan's Binding and the 4 Conclave Tribunal in the main deck?
So I've put a lot of thought into the adoption of Baffling End in these white sideboards since the Pro Tour, because it was a relatively common sideboard card, maybe not necessarily as a 4 of, especially not alongside 4 main deck Conclave Tribunal and 2 Ixalan's Binding. But if you look at Baffling End, a couple of things stand out. Number 1, it doesn't require, like an attacking creature, like somebody being tapped, right? The way that the Jeskai control version goes. But the other thing about it is you can take out a really good creature with Baffling End, and it's not like they get it back, right? They just get like a dinosaur, which is, for folks who can remove an enchantment, that's a bonus. But I think the thing that is really important here is that Conclave Tribunal, Baffling End, Ixalan's Binding, not Baffling End, but the other 2, have the ability to deal very well with high-end Jeskai threats without triggering Niv Mizzet. Baffling End obviously can't do that, but it's just like all part of the family, I think, if you want to go against somebody's creatures. And also if you're playing against somebody who has also fast creatures or bigger creatures than you. Like, this deck doesn't have very big creatures, maybe other than Venerated Loxodon, and it doesn't have marshals. So I think it potentially could be brickwalled by like a pretty big 3-drop, and so this would be pretty useful for taking one of those out.
What do you think of just 3 Hunted Witness? That seems to be the one they shave so often, though.
Yeah, it's odd. I don't know about this Snubhorn Sentry over Hunted Witness, right? Like, there's a lot of leaning in on the City's Blessing in these lists. And I guess they get the City's Blessing, right? But they pretty much have to play fair to get the City's Blessing, with the exception of Legion's Landing. Like, I guess History Benalia puts a little more material out there.
Heroic Reinforcements.
2 for 1. But for the most part, they're just, like, casting 1-drops and putting a guy in play, right? They're not spreading wide the way the green decks do. No, but I'm just not a believer in the Snubhorn Sentry to this degree. It's okay. Maybe it does add kind of a, maybe there's enough applications in the head-to-head, and any of the other matchups are going long enough. I mean, but I'd have to see it in action. It doesn't even shut down a Vanguard, right? Like, I don't know. Would you really rather have a Snubhorn Sentry than just like a Healer's Hawk? Like, a Healer's Hawk doesn't shut down some of these attacks, but just actually trade with some of them, right? Just straight up trades with a Sky Marcher Aspirant, and then you gain some life.
Well, I mean, it also depends on how much are you trying to hedge against red. But
yeah, that is true. I mean, this deck is no champion against red. Like, red loves when you play an Adanto Vanguard. They shock it, and you're obligated to pay 4, or they lightning strike it, and then they untap and play Chain Whirler. How many times are you going to do this, right? And then you battle them with the Chain Whirler, and you're going to pay 4 to stop the Indestructible, and they respond with an instant speed removal spell. Like, they couldn't buy that much damage with their actual spells. They need to cooperate.
Yeah, but you don't need to cooperate. You can just let it die.
You certainly could.
It would. So would any of your other 2-drops would have died? There's also Shield Mirror, though, man. Shield Mirror out of the sideboard. Yeah.
I mean, Shield Mirror. I mean, I don't want to play against Shield Mirror when I'm red. That's for sure. It can't be blocked, right? And then separately, oh my gosh, that other clause is just horrible.
Yeah, 3 on the way in, 3 on the way out.
Yeah, no Moss Shield Mirror.
Yeah, you were speaking, though, to Mortician's Union, the other 8-0 competitor, playing a take on Golgari that, it doesn't seem like a total table flip. It's a slightly different configuration than we've seen, but 2 Midnight Reaper, 3 Vivian Reed, and 2 Carnage Tyrant in terms of a mix of high-end.
Yeah. I mean, I would just note, 2 Midnight Carnage Tyrant, that's not outlandish, right? We see decks that have 3, and rare cases.
Usually we see 1 and 3. 2 is the less common number.
Yeah, but I'm pointing at 2 things. So the Vivian Reeds, 3x Vivian Reeds, that's a commitment. That's a pretty solid commitment for
That's a very solid commitment.
Slaying, a
Mizzet or 2.
Yeah, without triggering it. But the other thing that's a little bit subtle here is that Memorial to Folly, X3, if you lose one of these creatures, or you can bin a Carnage Tyrant with Seeker Squire or Jadelight Ranger or Merfolk Branchwalker early, you can get it back. But having all of these different Explore guys is not just synergistic with Wildwood Walker, it's actually also synergistic with playing utility lands like Memorial to Folly. So it's kind of like digging for a spell, and then especially if you somehow bend your Carnage Tyrant, whether it died legitimately or you just had to get rid of it with your Explore guy early, or just it's like more Carnage Tyrants, especially after sideboarding.
How are you into 0 Assassin's Trophy main? 1 in the board?
I think that one of the reasons that if it were me playing Golgari, I would want to play Assassin's Trophy. That card is very flexible. But it looks like Mortician's Union here is just leaning in on Vraska's Contempt. We've seen other eras of this standard where no one was Vraska's Contempting, and here there's a 3x Vraska's Contempt. I don't know.
Well, part of the way you get to play 3 Vraska's Contempting Golgari alongside 3 Ravenous Chupacabra is part of the payment for not playing any Fine Brokers.
Oh, yeah, so you can only play so many.
Nor any Vraskas.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But he's still made room for 4 Llanowar Elves.
Yeah, that one's a good one, I think.
That was a real struggle, I bet, to get the Llanowar Elves in.
Yep. But he was not alone. Llanowar Elves seemed to be pretty popular this weekend among the Golgari decks. What do you think about the use of just I guess these Jeskai and Izzet decks, the use of shock on the rise? Like, for instance, Junik finished 7-1 with a list that featured 4 shocks alongside 4 Lava Coil and a couple other removal spells as well, Beacon Bolt and so on. But shock's popularity obviously big because of the presence of white aggro after the Pro Tour. But how much does it even matter when your Llanowar Elf gets shocked out of these decks?
Well, I think it depends, right? So Junik's deck, for example, is an Izzet Drake deck, right? Well, it's actually Drake Light. There's 3 Crackling Drakes and no Enigmas in this deck. But on the first turn, the only plays that you've got are Shock and Opt. And if the opponent goes first...
Is it Gilgate, baby?
Yes, there is one Izzet Gilgate. You are correct. But no substantive plays other than Shock and Opt. If you want to... just play a shock on turn 1 against their Llanowar Elves on turn 1, you've undone the demi time walk that they've got going on with the Llanowar Elves, which is very valuable, I think, because that's one of the main incentives to playing one of these green decks is that you can get the jump on turn 1. Also, I think that Opt is a more attractive card to hold for a little bit later. It can potentially help chain you into another card drawing spell to retrieve Arclight Phoenix.
Yeah. What do you think of Shocks 5 and 6 in the board? Shiv and Fire, yeah.
Well, so that card is not just a shock. Remember, it can take out a 4 toughness creature as well. A little known ability on this card. I think substantially higher utility on that play when you have Goblin Electromancer. The other thing that I'd say is this deck has a main deck Murmuring Mystic and a sideboarded Murmuring Mystic. So just having cheap plays is a little bit different in this deck than it is in some of the other Izzet and Jeskai decks. So you can just if you can just untap with Murmuring Mystic and throw out any 3 or 4 cheap spells the next turn, that's actually just 3 or 4 more cards, right? They're just cards in the form of a 1/1 flying token, but it's quite different to be able to do that than some of the other decks. And by the way, many aggro decks just can't get through that. They're if they don't have trample, they're just kind of stuck.
Dive down in the sideboard. Adrian Sullivan's presence spreading.
Yeah, well, he's got 2 Niv Mizzet Perun, but there are other applications for dive down, but I think that's the important one. What do you think about this 3 Crackling Drake, 1 Crackling Drake sideboard main deck Murmuring Mystic? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't hate it because I think that the Murmuring Mystic is such a nice hedge when your opponent... When everybody just has Vivian Reeds for days, it's kind of nice to draw 1 Murmuring Mystic and 1 Crackling Drake instead of 2 Crackling Drakes.
How about Crackling Drake number 4 versus Beacon Bolt number 2 or Entrancing Melody number 1?
I love the Entrancing Melody. So... to me, I think the second Beacon Bolt is kind of sketchy. That would be the card I would look to.
Yeah. I think I agree on that one.
Dude, dive down. Big finishes, all, continuing. Qtaro, 7-1 with Adrian style, all the way down to the Enigma Drakes instead of Crackling Drakes. 2 dive downs, main deck.
Yeah, it's
the real deal.
It's just Adrian living here.
nice seeing it not as not a flash in the pan.
Oh no, absolutely not. Like this deck seems like it's I think this is maybe not a paradigm shifting deck for the format, but the technology is really, really useful.
Oh yeah, and even some of the other decks that are not just straight up Adrian's list, like Fire 10798, playing a variation with 3 Niv Mizzet, 3 Crackling Drake, 3 Teferi, and just 1 dive down, but still the 4 treasure map experience and still has that main deck dive down to protect Niv Mizzet, in some capacity.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of Deafening Clarions here also. I think the Clarion, first of all, is an amazing card in the format, right? For its casting cost, it does something much different than other things at its same casting cost, right? So there are red and or black competitors that only get you for 2 toughness. This is 3, and it's just so meaningful when you have Crackling Drake and Niv Mizzet, which are creatures that are going to live through the Clarion and can potentially get lifelink. It's just really, really good.
Yeah, and the Deafening Clarion, the fact that you can actually, under some circumstances, put 2 of them together on the Carnage Tyrant helps really take some of the pressure off just having 2 white sweepers. Just one settle the wreckage and one Nova. Despite obviously you get to pick up the Star of Extinctions after boarding, but they have so many Carnage Tyrants and ways to get them back and to keep going through them that you got to have more answers.
Well, for me, I have my go-to cards that I play in certain color combinations. I'm like, all right, these are the cards that I have against Jeskai, right? And I often play a bunch of Carnage Tyrants, or I'll side a bunch of Banefires. I go to a lot of the same cards and have consistently seen performance out of those cards against Jeskai. And in the last week or so in playing and testing, I can tell you this shift towards Adrian's style of play, which is just to have more Niv Mizzets, and in some cases just playing...
Well, and dive down. Yeah, dive down. I think a few people were playing Niv Mizzet, but I think the heavy use of Niv Mizzet protected with dive down, literally in this MOX, the sheer quantity of people adopting such a strategy, it's actually quite high. There's like half a dozen other ones.
Yeah, I'm just saying, for me personally, I mean, obviously the dive down is part of the essential package that Adrian innovated, right? But I'm just saying, for me personally and how I've approached these matchups, the dive down is less meaningful because I don't tend to be Banefiring the Niv Mizzet. What I was just going to say is, like, the presence of more Niv Mizzets actually is kind of throwing some of the strategies that I've been using in this standard on its ear, because the opponent just kills you. Like, when it was like the Cassis version and they're just like sitting there like playing with their Azor's Gateway and, 1-for-1ing your big threats and kind of dirtling, like, you just kill them every single time, either with the 7/6 or with a Banefire to the face or some combination of those two things. Adrian's deck literally like plays it of Mizzet, untaps with it, and you're dead the next turn. Like, not 1 attack, 2 attacks usually, but like they just pile it on with random instants and they just get you. I mean, that you had also Niv Mizzets at the Pro Tour, right? You
2+1.
Yeah, the power level of this card, it's just the sheer number of them in Jeskai has gone up by like 40% or something.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people weren't even playing it, but the people who were playing it would frequently only play 2. Harry 13's take on Adrian style Jeskai has several kind of points worth talking about. First, most noticeably to me, cutting any sort of Crackling Drake, Enigma Drake action and having a creature package that's just Niv Mizzet and Sailor of Means.
Well,
Sailor of Means, the natural combo with Deafening Clarion. You see he lives through it.
Yep. So Sailor of Means is a human pirate for 3 mana for 2 and a blue for a 1/4. And when it enters the battlefield, you get a treasure. I gotta say, not on my short list for cards to play in Jeskai Control, but does have some synergy with Karn and Treasure Map.
Well, and Rao and Teferi. If you play a Rao or a Teferi on turn 4, kind of doing it.
Oh, yeah. So well, and then like minor synergy with like Secrets of the Golden City, because I guess the Sailor of Means does put 2 permanents into play, so it can help you ascend.
Yeah, and speaking of which, Secrets of the Golden City instead of Chemist's Insight that some people play, and obviously Adrian stayed away from all that jazz, but one Secrets of the Golden City as your divination of choice. I gotta say, I like it a lot better than divination.
I mean, it's not a hard bar, right? Like, it is very slightly more difficult to cast, but its payoff is, really substantial when you have a requisite number of permanents in play, which you can do going long. I think that...
Particularly flipping Treasure Map. I mean, Treasure Map gets you there all the way.
Well, here's the thing about Secrets of the Golden City. I think if you're going to go in this direction, don't you want to play more copies of this card? Because, like...
Nah. Don't want to hypnotize you. At the end of the day, it's mostly divination.
But burning it as divination,
you need room, dude. You need room.
No upside.
You need room for Sailor of Means in your curve.
Yeah, I guess you do. What do you think about adding? So Karn is just not that. I mean, it's obviously a good card.
I'm not into. I'm just not into it in Jeskai.
Good with permission spells. It's just not. Like,
it's also just tough in this style where it's like, okay, what's my big plan? I Karn, and one of the cards is Secrets of the Golden City, so I'm like, I have to spend my cards getting more cards. It can be fine, but you're like, okay, what's my card? It's Sailor of Means.
I mean, Karn Syncopate is like such an awkward combination. Like,
would you Spell Piercer settle the wreckage?
Would you minus Karn to get a Syncopate into your hand? Like, I mean, maybe, right? Like, but
circumstances.
It's not like, I think when I'm a little boy, like thinking about, sitting by my bed, writing in my dream journal about what I want to do with Karn Sign of Urza, minusing it to get a Syncopate is not high on my list. Dude,
how do you feel about Dual Shot out of the board?
It's a surprising little card, right? When the Jeskai deck dual shots you were like, wow, I didn't see that coming. And at the
do you think it's high impact enough compared to like Cannonade, Fiery Cannonade?
Well, if I'm going to play a card like Dual Shot, it's typically not going to be in a 3-color deck, right? The reason is I could probably do better. That's my cynical thought. But when it gets you, they get you good.
It's good against the tokens. It's just I think there's cool stuff here. I actually don't hate the Sailor of Means, and I like the Secrets of the Golden City. I cannot wrap my head around the dual shot here instead of the 4th Deafening Clarion.
Oh, well, I mean, especially when you have some versions that are maxed out on Deafening Clarion, at least after sideboarding, and have Fiery Cannonade, like those people really know about killing white weenie creatures. I mean, I guess Dual Shot,
dude, it combos with Sailor of Means, because like if you're blocking a 2/2,
I mean, no. Like, I would just rather have more Lyras. Is there any deck that you would that you're siding in Dual Shot that you're not siding in Lyra?
I don't know. I don't know that how much like. Are you just boarding in Lyra Dawnbringer against all these Ixalan's Binding Conclave Tribunal decks?
Yeah, I think you are. Like, I mean, so you have a bunch of permanents that they might want to get, right? Like, this deck has Karns. It has Thrall, Teferi. I mean, honestly, I played against, multiple people who've made top 8s of Pro Tours who are happy to Ixalan's Binding my Treasure Map, right? Like, seriously, they're happy to do it. They're like, that thing is going to demolish me. Happy. That's like Black Lotus Ancestral Recall. And it's also an important part of this.
A completely fair assessment.
Very fair Ancestral Recall / Black Lotus. And yet it is still a Black Lotus Ancestral Recall. In this style of deck, they lean very heavily on it because they don't typically have like all the Chemist's Insights and everything that some of the other Jeskai decks do. So if you take out their treasure map, they're just like kind of a regular deck. And especially if you get them early, they don't necessarily have the ability to bridge into those powerful planeswalkers. And even if they do, those decks are actually very good at sending an Adanto Vanguard straight into Teferi's face. Like, that's one of the main things that they can do. So I think, like, end of the day, every single game I'm siding in Dual Shot, I think I'm siding in Lyra Dawnbringer. Also, I mean, I don't know. Like, would you also side in Invoke the Divine there? Like,
definitely.
That is
absolutely. It's amazing combo against them. It's amazing against them.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think I would just rather have a second Invoke the Divine and a second Lyra Dawnbringer rather than any dual shots if I were to go that direction. Because I think they all come in all at the same time every time the dual shot comes in. And then plus there are games that I would bring in Invoke the Divine or Lyra Dawnbringer when I wouldn't bring in dual shot, right? Because I look at dual shot and I'm like, this card is miserable, but Lyra Dawnbringer would be good, right? Like against any medium-sized creature deck, right? Like Lyra Dawnbringer is very good against medium-sized creatures. Invoke the Divine is good against like white creature decks that are relying on exile enchantment effects. So, you know, they're all a happy family from that perspective.
So it's not a Jeskai deck, but the evolution of Grixis went in an interesting direction this weekend. Mind Candy's Grixis list, it's a Grixis deck after your own heart. 4 disinformation campaigns, despite a relatively sparse package of surveilling. You know, there's just 4 Thought Erasure, 4 Discovery Dispersal, and then tapping into just a little bit of 3 Sinister Sabotage and 2 Dream Eater.
So I gotta say, I think the Dream Eaters are like a big part of what's going on here. That card is pretty good. I've seen it do a lot of stuff that where control decks get behind, and you think like, all right, this is going to be, you know, the death knell for them. Like Dream Eater bouncing the Immortal Sun and then untapping to play Disinformation Campaign, or sometimes, depending on the timing of the game, even using the Eldest Reborn to get rid of the Immortal Sun after Dream Eater's bounced it. Like, these are plays that this deck can make. It just has to be real careful, you know? Like, just got to put them in a situation where that's actually what's going to land. The other thing is, like, Dream Eater very subtly, alongside the Eldest Reborn, I think is one of the main ways this deck can interact with Carnage Tyrant. Like, Dream Eater alone can't necessarily beat Carnage Tyrant, but Dream Eater can certainly gang up with a friend to get rid of Carnage Tyrant. And the fact
there's just not many friends here, though, right?
Yeah, but, like, there are some.
Who's the friend? It's just Nico Bolas,
right? It could be the other Dream Eater, right? But like the fact that Dream Eater is an instant is very meaningful because, like, you know, the way it seems clear, you know, there's only just like 1 4X dude on the other side. You send the Carnage Tyrant, you're like, all right, I'm just trample over them to get you again next turn. Dream Eater come down, you know, I don't know, bounce your Path of Discovery, whatever you got, you know, and bounce your token. I don't know what it's bouncing. Kind of doesn't matter. If you can, like, cross your fingers and put 2 guys in front of Carnage Tyrant, at least you're not dead. Carnage Tyrant's dead instead. Like, that guy was just going to beat you.
Yeah, I just don't know how many Carnage Tyrants Dream Eater is really going to be blocking.
Yeah, but if you look at the structure of this deck, there's not so many ways to beat a Carnage Tyrant, right? Like, you have to sweep all their other guys and then hit it with the Eldest Reborn, or you have to make them discard it with Thought Erasure, or just
Unmoored Ego. Name Carnage Tyrant.
Just concede game 1.
They don't always have it. Sometimes you can just get them. You got a lot of discard and stuff. You know, like they have to assemble Carnage Tyrant and 6 mana. And if you're hitting them turn 2 Thought Erasure, turn 3 Disinformation Campaign, and then you've got other discard cards, you know, turn 4 Nico Bolas, that's already kind of the fix.
What do you think about 3 Sinister Sabotage? I feel like if I'm going to be
I don't hate it.
Capable of casting Sinister Sabotage and I put Sinister Sabotage in my deck, I think I'm going all the way.
Nah, I don't mind. I don't mind. And here's why. To begin with, there are only so many. You only have so many spots in your curve for 3s and 4s, and this is a deck that's got 5s and 6s, right? with 2 Dream Eater up at 6 and the Eldest Reborn at 5. The 4th spot of this deck is already overcrowded to begin with 4 Nico Bolas alongside Ritual of Soot and Vraska's Contempt. Really needs to keep the curve down, and these 3 Sinister Sabotages are alongside a Golden Demise and 4 Disinformation campaigns. You got to make room for some amount of these cast downs and Discovery Dispersal and Thought Erasure. Or are you talking about cutting a 4 for the Sabotage?
I was actually eyeing that Spell Pierce. 1 Spell Pierce.
I don't hate Spell Pierce.
I don't hate Spell Pierce. I love Spell Pierce.
I don't hate Spell Pierce.
1 Spell Pierce is less consistent than the 4th Sinister Sabotage, I think.
Yeah, but it's better to draw 1 of each than 2 Sinister Sabotages sometimes. Like, Sinister Sabotage, drawing 1 is okay, but if you draw 2 and your opponent, as a guy who has drawn 2 Sinister Sabotages on the draw against a white deck,
how does
that is slow as all get out.
So let's talk about this deck's matchup with the white deck. First of all, Deadweight, reliable answer to Adanto Vanguard, yeah?
Definitely. That's one of the big strengths it has over a card like Shock.
And then in addition, some combination of Golden Demise and Ritual of Soot can, at least get 2 for 1 most of the time, right? If not more.
By the way, I did want to note, I do like Deadweight better in a deck like this than some of the alternatives. The difference between 1 and 2 is so big. Like, I think that you'd be willing to pay a premium to get 1 cost removal in a deck like this. And so what you don't want is to have to pay an extra mana for a little bit of extra trinket text. Like a couple extra life, for instance.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right about the 2s on the way up. I mean, there's only so much room. You were mentioning about Thought Erasure a minute ago.
I love Thought Erasure in this deck. Obviously, it's just natural combo with this information campaign. I do think that there's kind of a gentleman's agreement that's kind of built into this deck, which is like, I get to do cool things, but only if you don't kill me. So please don't kill me. You know what I mean? Like when you come to the tournament with the Grixis deck, even when you have figured out Deadweight and some of these sweepers, I don't think that the aggro decks, namely the white aggro or the red aggro decks, are the ones that you're all signing up to play against all day.
Well, I do think Thought Erasure is underrated against the white decks. Like, I think that their deck, if you can actually disrupt them a little bit, they don't have that much staying power. Like, the Thought Erasure being able to actually hit the thing you want is, like, actually just frequently better than any counterspells would be. And the combination of, 1 Golden Demise and 2 Ritual Soot in the main, plus a Golden Demise and a Ritual Soot in the sideboard, is a pretty healthy amount of sweeping when you're doing all this surveilling to go find him.
That's fair. And then Thought Erasure it's perfectly solid for, if you play it on turn 4, let's say, or turn 3, to take out like their heavy hitter, whether it's a Loxodon or kind of some hasty tokens coming. The thing that's a disadvantage that the white decks have in main deck at least is that they pretty much have to attack you to death. And this deck can get into a position where it's not going to lose purely by being attacked to death. Whether the red deck can beat it with either burn cards or Experimental Frenzy going off is, those are possibilities. But the white deck isn't going to do that in game 1. Might do that in game 2. So I think you're right. Like, just slowing people down with Thought Erasure and then having the ability, when you start Thought Erasuring and Disinformation campaigning people and they have to discard spells, then they have a tendency to just dump everything on the ground because,
right.
You're going to, otherwise you're going to force them to discard it. And then they're really just playing into your Ritual Soot.
There's a really interesting, different Thought Erasure deck by Danny Bambino. On the surface, I mean, I don't know. I'm just curious your take on this. I mean, this is like a mono black control deck that splashes blue for Thought Erasure and green for Thunderherd Migration, Vraska, and Assassin's Trophy.
Wow.
Oh, sorry. And the most important one, of course, Carnage Tyrant.
So, Thunderherd Migration, I feel like, is just one of the best, most underplayed cards in Standard. And asterisk caveat on that, I've been playing a lot of decks that have land ramping that are green that also incorporate multiple Carnage Tyrants main deck, if not Wayward Sword Tooth and like Deathgorge Scavenger in my sideboard and Brontodons. And even I don't play Thunderherd Migration. It's very inconsistent. But if you can unlock this card, it is awesome. That said, there are not a lot of dinosaurs in this deck.
4 Carnage Tyrants. Full stop. Boom.
And in the sideboard, there's not even, a lot of the time, there is not even a black dinosaur. Nothing.
So I think it's interesting the way this deck might trick you at first. If they don't draw the blue lands, it kind of, looks like a Golgari deck that got stuck with no creatures, like a real creature like Golgari draw. But that's because there are no creatures. It's just the Golgari deck, but cut all the creatures. It's just 4 Carnage Tyrant, 4 Karn, and 2 Vraska. And instead of all the Jadelight Rangers of the world and whatnot, the deck's packing Thought Erasure, Thunderherd Migration, Treasure Map, and then just even more removal. Fungal Infection main deck even.
I cannot get behind that fungal infection and playing only 3 Vraska's Contempts. That just smacks me as cute. Right? This deck has literally 2 swamps.
Yeah, but it's got a lot of fixing. I mean, Treasure Map helps a lot anyway. You're all in on Ritual of Soot anyway.
But when I say it only has 2 swamps, that card is super high impact on approximately turn 1. Right, turn 2 maybe when the opponent has gone first. Every point after that, I think you generally rather have something like a Cast Down or the Assassin's Trophy, and Danny Bambino is sacrificing a Vraska's Contempt in order to make room for that fungal infection. It's just too cute for me. There are some decks that have a large number of basic swamps, etc., and I'd say, all right, I can imagine this card, giving you some tempo and so on. But this deck, it's not, I don't think he's getting enough.
He's already got 10 4-drops. You want an 11th 4-drop?
Yeah, kind of. This deck is...
You're so greedy.
But this deck is the prototypical deck that gets murdered by Teferi. Right? If he doesn't have Carnage Tyrant online, Teferi...
He's also got 2 Assassin's Trophies.
I mean, Teferi's text is draw a counterspell and give myself the mana required to cast the counterspell. Right?
Not until after Assassin's Trophies had a chance to work its magic. That's not even counting if he Thought Erasures you.
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk about this Thunderherd Migration. Are you in on this? Wouldn't you rather have?
I'm not saying I'm in on it. No, I think it's too inconsistent with just 4 Carnage Tyrants.
If you're gonna go that direction, do you just play some Ashes or I can imagine Circuitous Route being good in this deck. Circuitous Route sets up Carnage Tyrant directly. Turn 4 Circuitous Route, turn 5 Carnage Tyrant. Worst case scenario, you don't make another land drop. You still hit Carnage Tyrant. It's also a very good setup for Vraska Relic Seeker.
Yeah. It's tough though because that's another 4.
Yeah, but that's true. But I mean, I don't know how often Thunderherd Migration is a 2 in this deck. I mean, we could do the math. It's got to be.
I'm saying even when it's a 5
time or something.
Even when it's a 3, going 3 into 5. At least you did something before the 4th turn. Dude, are you buying Tezzeret? Artifice Master.
Am I buying it? No, I'm leaving it in the display case of the store. Oh, you mean in this deck? I think that card's pretty underplayed. It's always impressive whenever I play against it.
Dude, you can just draw 2 cards because you already flipped your treasure map.
Yeah, it always seems to be way better than it gets played for. Like, people just, whoever's playing it, like, they're getting good card advantage out of it, and they're usually beating me. So I'm not sure why that card isn't more popular. I think it's totally.
I would guess it is because every blue deck tends to have either Ral or Teferi, both of which are quite a bit stronger. This is that rare deck that plays neither red nor white but has blue.
Yeah, but they're not always stronger, right? Are they? Like, Tezzeret Artifice?
That's a straw man. Always stronger? They're quite a bit stronger. But sure, like, if what you need is a 1/1 flyer, the card that gives you a 1/1 flyer might be better.
I don't know. They seem to be using that 0 ability against me a lot.
Yeah, I think that Tezzeret is totally fine here. I think that the key is the lack of white or red. I think if you wanted to bring blue-black back, you'd want to look to Tezzeret there as well.
I think if you've got the green, you have to play something like, I was going to say, with Crusher Canopies, but it doesn't even do it. Like, this deck is completely shut down by the Immortal Sun, right? Like, all of its other than Carnage Tyrant, every other.
Well, Assassin's Trophy, dude.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
There's only 2. All the decks that have the Immortal Sun play at least 2. Most of them play extra to the.
Yeah, you got 1 for each.
That's going to be a toughie. I mean, I guess you could still try to kill them with Carnage Tyrant, but usually those guys all mean business. Anybody with the Immortal Sun in their deck, they got some kind of discounting giant spread going on.
So there was another treasure map deck complete with the Immortal Sun main deck, and this one did the unthinkable. 4 treasure maps, 2 Azure Gateways alongside them. This is Zernak's exotic Boros control deck, like Boros board control, with the card advantage in this bad boy coming from 2 Karns, 2 Azur's Gateways, the Immortal Sun, 4 treasure maps, and then a little bit of incidental stuff. There's a lot of sweepers like these kind of decks always have, and you can get a little bit of mileage possibly out of stuff like Siege Gang Commander, Dire Fleet Daredevil, and History of Benalia.
So I saw Sandblack posted a deck similar to this recently, and I looked at it, and I love so many of the things going on in this deck. Like, oh wow, I love that card. I love that card. I love the card. Just up and down the deck, I'm looking at it. I mean, obviously, Karn Immortal Sun is a bit of a non-bow, but at the end of the day, I was just like, why would I play this instead of Naya? Right? Like, the Naya Circuitous Route deck just seems like it does all the things in this deck better. Right? Like, this deck is a Star of Extinction top-end deck, and it doesn't have Circuitous Route. It just has Boros cards. Like, this deck has no way to regulate its draw, and it's hidden.
Yeah, Pirate's Pillage! Besides, you can't talk about no way to regulate your draw on a deck with 2 Azur's Gateways and 4 treasure maps.
All right, you're right. I guess it has numerous ways to regulate its draw.
Yeah, and even grinding, when you go long, Arch of Araska is another card advantage source.
But Naya has all of those same tools. And I'm just saying, like, I think Siege Gang Commander is a weirdly low power endgame card in this strategy. Right?
I mean, it's pretty good for fighting against white aggro. It is a little wild when your deck has 2 Star of Extinction, 3 Cleansing Nova. 1 Cleansing Nova, 3 Deafening Clarion, 2 Settle the Wreckage. It's like, oh, yes, of course, the classic 3 Siege Gang Commander, 8 Sweepers package.
The thing I'm...
But I don't know. I don't hate it.
you have all these cards that are like Azur's Gateway, Treasure Map, Karn, that are like, all right, application to the battlefield, spread out some permanents, regulate my draw, get some more, long-term assets, Siege Gang Commander. Like, there are so many matchups where that's your line, and they're just like, okay, basically like throw away my Fiery Candidate at the end of turn, or untap and cast Deafening Clarion, and like you spend 5 mana. This was like supposed to be your guy to win with, and it's so not durable to just rando cards that people have.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of like a Pia, a Pia, like when you're in Modern, they love to just make the mini Siege Gang, the 3/4 of a Siege Gang commander. And I think here, this is kind of doing some of that Pia Noir type of stuff. Pia and Kira Noir.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I actually like this strategy. I'm just wondering why it's not... when I say I like this strategy, I like a lot of the things that are going on in this deck. I love a lot of the cards individually, and I like a lot of the cards in harmony with each other. I just don't know why you play it instead of Naya. That's the question I have. I think the Naya deck is a real deal deck.
Well, I could believe it. Haven't seen it yet. Might just not have tested. Like, they might not have tested it, because I don't think the Naya deck builds itself.
Well, no, but Yellow Hat built it for us, All hail Papa Yellow Hat.
Fair. What do you think of using Pirate's Pillage to get out the fast Star of Extinction?
Well, that is not where I saw Pirate's Pillage, being used. I think that your use of the word fast is kind of a lull. Pirate's Pillage itself is a 4.
Yeah, but I mean, what are you going to do?
I mean, discard a card? I mean, that's...
Well, you draw 2.
Yeah, I know. I mean, but Jeskai is the deck on top.
So you gotta like these main deck Banefires, right?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I love the Gateway, right? Like, there's a lot of games where the Gateway just cures all ills. This deck has many random casting costs. Like, ooh, card, Siege Gang Commander, Seal Away, Cleansing Nova.
The Immortal Sun.
Yeah, that's it. Flip for 5. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I think that part of the deck is just going to bail you out of your problems sometimes.
What about Direfleet Daredevil? Talk to me.
That is an aggressive main deck card. Like, that is aggressive. For example, what if you're playing against White Weenie? I guess you have a 2/1 first strike, which ain't bad, actually. That ain't bad. But he's not getting a lot of money against them.
Yeah, and, like, against the red decks, like, they can kill it.
He gets his money against the red decks. Like, he's
Does he? Does he?
Yeah.
Does he? In what way? What? If you play a shock?
Yeah, so you're
what? How did they ever shock you? What turn is this?
I don't know. Like
turn 9, you can do 2 damage. You can build some sort of a creature that does 2 damage on the way in.
Well, I mean, even if you're just gonna put it that way, this card is kind of outclassed by Viashino Pyromancer, right? It's also a 2/1 for 1 and a red, but just gets you without paying for the shock extra. Just like the shock is glued on.
Yeah. I just think if you're going to do this Direfleet Daredevil stuff, it just seems more intuitive to me to do it in the sideboard.
This card is very aggressive in the main deck.
But I do like boarding into Lyra Dawnbringer in decks like this. And I like the Adanto Vanguard being in the sideboard and not the main deck. Yeah,
but if you look at this deck, 2 Lyra Dawnbringer, 2 Invoke the Divine, like we were talking about in that other deck, yet no dual shots. Didn't get the memo. Yeah. No dual shots here.
Yeah. I don't know about dual shot. But this deck is sweet. This is like a very different style of deck than we've been seeing. Or are you saying that this is just like a worse Naya? Like this is like Naya conceptually. It's just like the sacrifice is made to keep it keep it just Boros.
Yeah, it feels to me like it's just a worse Naya. Like the Naya deck hits you so hard over the head with its endgame stuff after its cast Circuitous route. Like, Siege Gang Commander is so not strong compared to a gigantic March of the Multitudes, for example. Or
dude, what a Carnage Tyrant.
Palaka Worm. Oh, yeah, obviously Carnage Tyrant. Like, I think that the Naiad... Well, it's hard to say, because main deck Banefire plus Azur's Gateway cures a lot of ills. But Naya still actually also has those tools. So, I don't know. Karn seems random here. Right?
Karn does seem random.
It's like very alone in that part of its deck list, and very turned off by the Immortal Sun.
Yeah, I don't know that you need the Karns in here. So, but I also would want to play a second The Immortal Sun if I didn't have access to Carnage Tyrant and stuff like that at my 6.
Oh, absolutely. I think that a lot of the decks have got both. Obviously, the set can't cast a Carnage Tyrant yet because it hasn't incorporated Circuitous route, but once it does that, it will be able to cast both of those cards at the 6.
Dude, would it just be insane? It's probably just terrible. But, like, I was wondering, would it just be insane if Golgari played the Immortal Sun instead of Vivian Reed?
Yes, I think it would be insane. The reason is, I mean, I've recently even been like, I have an Immortal Sun deck and I'm in a sideboard Vivian Reed. You just actually need answers to Niv Mizzet. Like,
that's fair.
It's such a troublesome card. The thing is, there's some decks where you just land the Immortal Sun and then you're like, all right, I'm going to grind them out. Like, I'm confident I'm going to grind them out if they don't have an answer to this. Even if they get, like, the Eldritch Reborn for my Carnage Tyrant, which is about the worst thing that you can imagine happening to you in that kind of a deck scenario. You just get so many more cards. You find another Carnage Tyrant, or you maybe just get an elf to put in front of it before you pass the turn, just from the grinding card advantage. But, you know, got to kill Niv Mizzet. Got to have Vivian Reed because of that.
There is one more standard deck I wanted to talk about. Ben White's played Goblins in the mock, the mocks. Ben White's list was kind of interesting. Goblin Chain Whirler, Goblin Crater Maker, Legion Warboss, and Siege Gang Commander, with no Goblin payoffs besides ostensibly Siege Gang Commander. But, you know, no non-Goblin creatures anyway, except for these Direfleet Daredevils and Rekindling Phoenixes. Did you see this version of Red? This is like... So to begin with, the 4 Treasure Maps main deck definitely remind me of you. But the lack of Experimental Frenzy anywhere in the 75 is shocking.
And where are the 1-drops?
The 1-drops are 2 Shocks and 2 Shivan Fires.
Yeah, this is a very slow red deck with no Experimental Frenzy. I guess it's Experimental Frenzy's Arch Virazga.
He's got 24 mountains and 1 arch. I don't know that it's fair to describe the arch as the Experimental Frenzy. I think what this deck's endgame is really... I've got 4 Rekindling Phoenix, 4 Siege Gang Commander, and 3 Banefire. This is like a little bit of a sideways Ponza deck with no land destruction. This is like a big red deck, you know?
What do you think about Legion Warboss? Do you think that's a good card?
It's a good card. It's tough when you don't have any cards smaller than it, though.
I'm just terrified.
I mean, it's okay. You could just power it off itself, but I think the card's just such a good card on its own that, yeah, I don't hate it.
I'm just terrified of any situation where I'm just like, all right, Legion Warboss, and they're like, Lyra Dawnbringer. Like, that is the most miserable situation, I think, for Legion Warboss.
Well, you got 4 Lava Coil, 2 Shock, 2 Shivan Fire, and sometimes the Lava Coil teams up with Chain Whirler. It's not like it's ideal, but Lyra Dawnbringer was going to be a whole thing anyway.
That's true. I mean, she is the least friendly creature to hit the table if you are a small red creature deck that has... I guess you could team up with like Coil and something else to kill it, or, you know, sometimes get it with a Banefire. But for the most part, if that thing sticks and they untap with it, you're in trouble.
Yeah, that's just true. Well, all right, man. I glad to see Standard continues to just keep kicking. What's your advice for next week?
If I'm playing an archetype deck, it's going to be Jeskai. Love the Niv Mizzet dive down combo that Adrian put together. I don't think we've seen the final version of that deck. I think it's going to continue to have new interesting angles that are applied on it. If you're not going to play an archetype deck right now, I'm big into mono green. 4 Carnage Tyrant, 4 Blanchwood armor. That's
fun.
Yeah, like it's pretty stupid, but like no one can really beat it if you put those things together. And unlike most 2-card combo decks, both of the cards are actually pretty good. Like you just get a Vine Mare with Blanchwood armor. That's also pretty hard to beat, right? It's not like Carnage Tyrant's like very, very hard to beat. But like Vine Mare's just like, all right, I'm annoying to block and I have hexproof and here's 10. At some point, they just don't get abyssed anymore. But then, if somebody just plops down a Niv Mizzet and they have like a Settle the Wreckage in their hand, you just go home. Like every part of that scenario is really bad for you.
All right, man. Same thing, man. I'm not the mono green, but I'm on Jeskai with dive downs. Adrian did it.
Yeah. So right. For us. For Brain, it's net decking Adrian. For me, only for Soul, applying a Blanchwood armor to my Carnage Tyrant. Patrick, no Soul this week. Soulless.
Who am I kidding, dude? Dive down it's enough Soul anyway.
Yeah, I guess if you're diving down Niv Mizzet, that's very close to a soulful play.
All right, dude. Right, see you next week.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, so jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber, stay